Barack Obama speaking in Seoul, but he still has domestic concerns at the front of his mind because the US Supreme Court has just begun hearing one of its biggest cases in decades. Judges are hearing a legal challenge to overturn President Obama's controversial overhaul of the US healthcare system. The act passed Congress without any Republican votes 2 years ago, but it remains a deeply divisive issue in America.
At stake, ballooning medical costs and health insurance for millions of Americans versus individual rights and the limits of federal power under the US Constitution. Washington correspondent Craig McMurtry filed this report outside America's highest court.
The stakes couldn't be higher. The fight over the Affordable Care Act that's now arrived here outside America's highest court in the land, the Supreme Court, is really an extension of a political row that's been going on for years in this country. The legislation is the defining piece of Barack Obama's presidency and is designed to extend health cover to millions of uninsured Americans. But critics like the Tea Party and like many conservatives have long argued that it's an overreach by the federal government. So now it's up to the 9 justices of the Supreme Court to decide. Those justices are breaking the argument up into 3 parts. Today they're going to look at the procedural question, that is, should they actually be hearing this case at all? Tomorrow they'll examine the question of whether the federal government actually has the power to force Americans to buy insurance or face a penalty. And on day 3 they'll look at the issue of severability, that is, if the justices have a problem with part of the legislation, can they strike that down, or does the whole thing need to be thrown out? Hundreds of people are gathered out here. Some have been here for days waiting to get in. They're looking for a prized red ticket.
Remember, if you take it today, you lose your spot in line for tomorrow. This is for today only. If you take this one, you lose your spot in line for tomorrow.
That means we get in to see the full consideration today.
How important is that?
Totally important. We got to protect our health care, and protecting the Affordable Care Act is protecting our health.
We're very, very excited. It's like Willy Wonka.
It clearly is the most critical issue economically and socially that this country has and has had for many years.
And Obamacare tramples our Constitution. I'm standing up for it. The majority of Americans think this law should be repealed.
Healthcare for everyone. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine.
We're charged an arm and a leg to keep, for example, to keep 4 to 5 people covered. With my kids being ill, it costs about $35,000 US a year, which most people can't afford. And, so a lot of people in our situation have gone without, which is, to me, unacceptable.
The justices really have 4 options. They could decide to defer and not make a ruling at all now. They could uphold it, or they could strike part of it down or throw it all out. Whatever they decide to do, it'll touch the lives of millions of Americans and potentially upend the presidential election race coming up later this year. Their decision is expected in June.